An ex-convict stood up for a bullied kid on a day when the world seemed determined to remind him of all he'd lost. Marcus Reed hadn't planned on being anyone's hero, not with his history, not with his past. But some instincts run deeper than regret. The November air bit through his thin jacket as Marcus hunched his shoulders against the wind. 3 months since his release, and freedom still felt like an ill-fitting suit. Too loose in some places, painfully tight in others. He'd traded iron bars for invisible ones. The halfway house, the probation meetings, the sideways glances from everyone who somehow seemed to know he'd spent the last 7 years at Oak Hill Correctional. His breath formed small clouds as he walked the 4 blocks from his dishwashing job to the bus stop. 4 blocks that might as well have been 4 miles for how his muscles ached after 8 hours on his feet. But it was honest work. The first honest work he'd had since he was 19. Marcus checked his watch, a cheap digital thing his probation officer had given him. 20 minutes until the next bus. He lowered himself onto the bench, wincing at the protest from his lower back. Across the street was a small playground, mostly empty in the late afternoon chill, except for a cluster of kids near the basketball court. He wasn't paying attention, not really, just letting his eyes rest somewhere, while his mind drifted to the small studio apartment he could almost afford if he saved another 3 weeks of paychecks. A real place, his own place. That's when he heard it, a sharp cry cut short. The kind of sound that makes something primitive in your brain snap to attention. 3 larger boys surrounded a smaller one at the edge of the playground. Even from across the street, their postures told the whole story. Predators circling prey. The small boy, maybe 10 or 11, clutched a backpack to his chest like a shield. Marcus turned away. Not his business. Not his problem. A second cry reached him, and something in the sound, raw, frightened, grabbed him by the throat. Before he could think, he was on his feet, crossing the street with long strides. The boys, teenagers, he could see now, were so focused on their target they didn't notice his approach until his shadow fell across them. "Hey!" The word came out gravelly from disuse. Marcus rarely spoke these days except when necessary. "That's enough." The tallest boy turned, a smirk ready on his face that faltered when he had to look up to meet Marcus's eyes. At 6'3", with shoulders broadened from years of prison workouts, Marcus knew he cast an imposing figure. "This ain't your business, man," the boy said, but uncertainty had already crept into his voice. Marcus didn't say anything. He'd learned in prison that silence could be more effective than words. He simply stared, letting the weight of his presence do the work. The boy, trying to appear as the leader, took half a step back. "Whatever. We were just messing around. Right, Ethan?" The small boy, Ethan, said nothing. His eyes, wide and blue, darted between his tormentors and this unexpected defender. "Just messing around," Marcus repeated, his voice flat. "Looks like the joke's over." The 3 teenagers exchanged glances, weighing their options. Marcus recognized the calculation in their eyes. The pride that wanted to stand ground versus the instinct warning them to retreat. He'd seen that same calculation countless times behind bars. "Come on," one of them muttered. "He's not worth it." They backed away, tossing final glares and mumbled threats that Marcus knew were empty. He stood immobile until they disappeared around the corner of the community center. Only then did he look down at the boy, who still clutched his backpack like it might save him from drowning. "You okay, kid?" Ethan nodded, though his lower lip trembled. "Thank you, sir." "Sir." The formality from such a young voice struck Marcus oddly. When was the last time anyone had called him sir? "They take anything from you?" Marcus asked. The boy shook his head. "They were trying to get my grandfather's watch." He loosened his grip on the backpack just enough to reveal a glimpse of something gold and gleaming. "My mom let me wear it today because I had my presentation." Marcus nodded, suddenly awkward. He wasn't used to conversations that didn't have clear endpoints, especially with children. "You waiting for someone to pick you up?" "My mom's working late," Ethan said, his voice small. "I'm supposed to walk home, but they've been following me all week." Marcus checked his watch. His bus would be coming in 5 minutes. If he missed it, the next one wasn't for another hour. "Where do you live?" The question came out before he could consider how it might sound. An ex-con asking a child for his address. "Maple Street." "The blue house with the porch swing?" Marcus knew the area. It was on his bus route, about 15 minutes past his stop. "I'll walk with you," he said, surprising himself. "Make sure those boys don't come back." Relief washed over the boy's face, followed quickly by caution. "My mom says I'm not supposed to go with strangers." A ghost of a smile touched Marcus's lips. "Smart mom. Tell you what, we'll stay on the main streets the whole way. You walk ahead of me and I'll keep watch from behind." That way, you're not going with me. I'm just going the same way. Ethan considered this, then nodded. Okay, I'm Ethan, by the way. Ethan Calloway. Marcus, he replied, deliberately omitting his last name. No sense in giving the kid enough information to Google him later. They set off, Ethan a few paces ahead, occasionally glancing back as if to ensure Marcus was still there. The November sun was already sinking, painting the sky in bruised purples and deep oranges. Why were those kids after you? Marcus asked after they'd walked a block in silence. Ethan shrugged, a gesture that seemed too world-weary for his small frame. They say I talk weird, that I use big words to sound smart. And do you? I just read a lot, Ethan said quietly. My grandfather says knowledge is freedom. The phrase hit Marcus with unexpected force. Knowledge is freedom. He'd heard something similar from the prison librarian, an older man who'd encouraged him to get his GED during his time inside. Your grandfather sounds like a wise man. Ethan's face brightened. He is. He works with people who made mistakes but are trying to do better. He says everyone deserves a second chance. Marcus made a non-committal sound. Second chances existed in children's stories and Hallmark movies, not in the real world. Not for men with records like his. They turned onto Maple Street, a row of modest but well-kept homes with small yards and tidy front porches. Ethan pointed to a two-story house with weathered blue siding and, as promised, a wooden porch swaying gently in the evening breeze. That's my house. Thanks for walking me home, Mr. Marcus. Just Marcus, he corrected. And you're welcome, Ethan. He should have left then. Should have turned around and hurried to catch the next bus. But something kept him rooted to the spot. Watching as the boy climbed the 3 steps to his front porch, Ethan tried the door and found it locked. Mom must not be home yet, he said, digging into his backpack for a key. Marcus frowned. You'll be okay by yourself? I'm 11, Ethan said with the dignity of someone claiming to be much older. I stay by myself all the time until Mom gets home. The key turned in the lock, and Ethan pushed the door open. He hesitated on the threshold, then turned back to Marcus. Do you want to wait inside? Until your bus comes? It's getting cold. Every instinct warned Marcus to decline. He was on parole, going into a house with a minor, alone, without the parents' knowledge. It was asking for trouble even if his intentions were innocent. I'd better not, kid. But thanks. Ethan's face fell slightly. Oh, okay. Marcus turned to go, but Ethan called after him. Same time tomorrow? Marcus looked back, confused. What? Will you be at the bus stop tomorrow? Those guys are always waiting for me after school. The request hung in the air between them. Marcus thought of his carefully planned schedule, the routine he'd established to keep himself on track. One deviation today was already more than he'd allowed himself since release. I work till 4, he said finally. Ethan's face brightened. I don't get out until 3:30. So that's perfect. Before Marcus could correct the misunderstanding, Ethan had disappeared inside, the door closing behind him with a decisive click. Marcus stood there for a moment longer, staring at the blue house with its porch swing. Then he turned and began the long walk back toward the bus route, knowing he'd already missed his connection. A promise he hadn't actually made weighed on his mind with each step. The sensible thing would be to avoid that bus stop tomorrow, to find another route home. He had enough complications in his life without adding some kids' problems to the list. Yet as he walked, the memory of Ethan's face, the relief when Marcus had appeared, the trust when he'd offered to let him wait inside, kept resurfacing like a buoy that refused to stay submerged. Knowledge is freedom. Everyone deserves a second chance. Marcus reached the bus stop just as rain began to speckle the sidewalk. He huddled under the shelter, alone with thoughts he couldn't quite shake loose. For the next week, Marcus found himself at the same bus stop at 4 o'clock. And each day, Ethan would appear, his backpack slung over one shoulder, a hesitant smile growing more confident with each meeting. They would walk the 15 minutes to Maple Street, Ethan chattering about school, books, or his grandfather's stories, while Marcus listened, offering occasional comments or questions. It was a strange arrangement that Marcus couldn't quite explain to himself. His life had been carefully compartmentalized since his release. Work, halfway house, probation meetings, repeat. Ethan was an anomaly, a variable he hadn't planned for. On Friday, as they approached the Blue House, Ethan suddenly asked, "Do you have a family, Marcus?" The question caught him off guard. They had developed an unspoken boundary. Ethan talked about his life, and Marcus listened without sharing his own. "Not anymore," he answered, the words coming out more clipped than he intended. Ethan glanced up at him, curiosity mingling with something like concern in his young eyes. "What happened to them?" Marcus kept his gaze fixed ahead. Some things aren't meant to last, kid. My dad left when I was 7, Ethan offered. Mom says sometimes people aren't ready for the responsibilities they take on. Marcus looked down at the boy, struck by the mature observation. Your mom sounds smart too. She works really hard, Ethan said proudly. She's a nurse at Memorial Hospital. That's why she has so many late shifts. They reached the blue house, and Marcus prepared for their usual goodbye. But Ethan lingered on the sidewalk. Would you like to come in today? Mom made spaghetti last night, and there's tons left over. She always makes too much. Marcus shook his head. Thanks, but I've got somewhere to be. The lie came easily. Disappointment flickered across Ethan's face, but he nodded. Maybe another time. Maybe, Marcus said, though he had no intention of ever meeting Ethan's mother. The last thing he needed was a concerned parent asking questions about why an adult man was walking her son home. As Ethan turned toward his house, a car pulled into the driveway, a tired-looking sedan with a dent in the passenger door. A woman emerged, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing scrubs under an open coat. Mom, Ethan called, running to her. She embraced him with the weariness of someone at the end of a long shift, but with undeniable warmth. Hey, honey, how was school? Good, doctor, good. This is my friend Marcus. He walks me home sometimes. Marcus froze as the woman looked up, her eyes meeting his. He should have left when he had the chance. Now he was trapped in an introduction he'd been carefully avoiding. Marcus? She approached, her expression a mixture of curiosity and caution. Up close, he could see the resemblance between mother and son. The same thoughtful blue eyes, though hers held the wariness of someone who had learned life's harder lessons. Marcus has been making sure those boys don't bother me after school, Ethan explained. Understanding dawned in her eyes. The ones who were bullying you? You didn't tell me they were still giving you trouble. I didn't want you to worry, Ethan mumbled. She turned to Marcus, extending her hand. I'm Lisa Calloway. Thank you for looking out for my son. Her handshake was firm, her eyes direct. Marcus felt strangely exposed, as if she could see right through to his parole papers and prison tattoos. It's nothing, he said, just going the same way. For a week straight? Lisa asked, a slight smile softening her question. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I should get going. Mom, can Marcus stay for dinner? Ethan asked suddenly. Please. We have all that spaghetti left. Lisa studied Marcus for a moment. He knew what she saw. A large man with close-cropped hair, calloused hands, and guarded eyes. Not the usual dinner guest in a single mother's home. To his surprise, she nodded. We do have plenty. You're welcome to join us, Marcus. He should have said no. Should have made an excuse and left. Instead, he heard himself say, if you're sure it's no trouble. Her smile widened slightly. Anyone who looks out for Ethan is welcome at our table. The inside of the Calloway home was modest but warm. Walls painted in soft yellows and blues, mismatched furniture that somehow worked together, and bookshelves overflowing with volumes of all sizes. It was nothing like the halfway house with its institutional furniture and bare walls. Make yourself comfortable, Lisa said, gesturing to the living room. I just need to change out of my scrubs. Left alone with Ethan, Marcus stood awkwardly in the center of the room, unsure where to place himself. You can sit down, Ethan said, dropping his backpack by the stairs. Want to see my grandfather's watch up close? Without waiting for an answer, he carefully extracted the gold timepiece from his bag and held it out proudly. Marcus took it gingerly. It was heavier than it looked, with intricate engravings on the back and what appeared to be real gold plating. The face was cream-colored with Roman numerals and delicate black hands. It's old, Ethan explained, from when watches had to be wound up every day. Marcus turned it over, noticing an inscription on the back. Time reveals truth. W.C. W.C.? He asked, handing the watch back. William Calloway. That's my grandfather. Marcus nodded, filing away the information without much thought. He was more preoccupied with how to navigate dinner with Ethan's mother without revealing anything about himself. Lisa returned wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair freed from its ponytail. She looked younger, less tired. Spaghetti just needs reheating, she said. Ethan, would you set the table? 3 places tonight. As Ethan hurried off to the kitchen, Lisa turned to Marcus. I hope you don't mind leftovers. Between work and single parenting, gourmet cooking isn't high on my priority list. Leftovers are fine, Marcus said. I appreciate the invitation. She studied him for a moment. Ethan says you meet him at the bus stop after your work shift? Marcus nodded cautiously. I wash dishes at Mario's on 5th Street. Ah, Mario's. Best garlic bread in town. Her tone was conversational, but Marcus could sense her carefully assessing him. How did you and Ethan connect? Marcus hesitated, deciding how much to share. I saw some kids giving him trouble. Stepped in. Found out we were heading the same direction. Lisa's expression softened. Thank you for that. Ethan's had a rough time fitting in since we moved here last year. He's different from other kids his age. More interested in books and his grandfather's stories than video games and sports. He's a good kid, Marcus said, meaning it. Smart. Too smart sometimes, Lisa said with a rueful smile. Gets him noticed in ways he doesn't always want. From the kitchen came the sound of plates being set on the table, followed by Ethan's voice calling that everything was ready. Dinner was a foreign experience for Marcus. For 7 years, he'd eaten institutional food in a noisy cafeteria, surrounded by men he needed to guard against. Before that, meals had been haphazard affairs. Fast food, microwave dinners, whatever was quick and cheap. Here, sitting at a small table with actual placemats, passing a bowl of spaghetti and a plate of garlic bread, listening to Ethan describe his day in detail, it was like visiting another planet. Mrs. Hensley said my science project was the best in class. Ethan was saying, twirling pasta around his fork with concentration. I did it on how plants grow toward light, and Grandpa helped me set up the experiment. That's wonderful, Lisa said, her pride evident. We'll have to tell him when he visits next weekend. Is he bringing me another book? Ethan asked eagerly. Lisa laughed. Probably. Your grandfather thinks books are the solution to everything. Knowledge is freedom, Ethan quoted seriously. The phrase again. Marcus focused on his plate, suddenly uncomfortable with the strange resonance of those words. Marcus, would you like more spaghetti? Lisa asked, noticing his empty plate. No, thank you. It was delicious. Mom makes the best sauce, Ethan declared. She puts in secret ingredients. Hardly secret, Lisa said with a chuckle. Just some extra basil and a pinch of sugar. Marcus, do you cook? Ethan asked. The question was innocent, but it forced Marcus to contemplate how little he'd been doing for himself since his release. Not really. Still learning the basics. Did your mom never teach you? Ethan persisted. Ethan, Lisa said gently, not everyone has the same family experience as we do. Marcus appreciated her intervention. It's okay. My mom wasn't around much. I never picked it up. I could teach you, Ethan offered enthusiastically. Mom's teaching me. I can make scrambled eggs and grilled cheese all by myself. The offer, so earnest and simple, caught Marcus off guard. When was the last time anyone had offered to teach him anything without an ulterior motive? Maybe someday, he said, not wanting to crush the boy's enthusiasm, but knowing there would be no cooking lessons in their future. After dinner, Marcus insisted on helping with the dishes despite Lisa's protests. It was, after all, what he did for a living now. As they stood side by side at the sink, Lisa washing, Marcus drying, she spoke in a lower voice so Ethan, who was in the living room with his homework, couldn't hear. I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you new to the area? I haven't seen you around before last week. Marcus focused on drying a plate with careful precision. Sort of. Been away for a while. Lisa handed him another plate, her movements efficient from long practice. Military. He almost laughed at the assumption, so far from the truth, yet offering such an easy out. He could say yes, claim he'd been overseas and she'd never know the difference. But something in him rebelled at the lie. Not here, in this kitchen that smelled of tomato sauce and home, with this woman who had opened her table to a stranger because he'd helped her son. No, he said finally. A prison? I was at Oak Hill until 3 months ago. He kept his eyes on the plate in his hands, expecting her to recoil, to ask him to leave, to wonder aloud how she could have let her son walk home with an ex-convict. Instead, after a pause just long enough to register surprise, she said, that must make adjusting difficult. Finding work, housing. Marcus looked up, caught off guard by her matter-of-fact response. Her expression was thoughtful, but not fearful. It does, he admitted. What were you in for? She asked directly. If you don't mind my asking, this was the question he'd been dreading, the one that usually ended conversations or started judgments. Armed robbery, he said, keeping his voice low. No one got hurt, but I made bad choices when I was younger. Lisa nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty. I appreciate that. She handed him another dish, and they continued working in silence for a moment. Then she added, for what it's worth, I believe people can change. My father-in-law, Ethan's grandfather, has spent his career on that principle. What does he do? Marcus asked, grateful for the shift in topic. He was the warden at Oak Hill for 20 years, retired 2 years ago. The plate Marcus was drying nearly slipped from his hands. Warden Calloway was your father-in-law? Lisa looked at him with renewed interest. You knew him? Marcus's mind raced. William Calloway. The inscription on the watch. How had he not made the connection? Warden Calloway had been a fixture at Oak Hill during most of Marcus's sentence. A tall, silver-haired man with piercing blue eyes who knew every inmate by name. Unlike many wardens who ruled from a distance, Calloway had walked the grounds regularly, speaking directly with prisoners, listening to concerns, implementing programs like the library and GED classes. He'd been firm but fair, a rare combination in the prison system. When Marcus had gotten into a fight during his second year and faced additional charges, it was Warden Calloway who had given him an alternative: work in the prison library and complete his GED. That decision had changed the trajectory of Marcus's time inside. Everyone at Oak Hill knew Warden Calloway, Marcus said carefully. Was he well liked? Lisa asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. More respected, Marcus answered truthfully. He was tough but fair, treated us like we were still people. Lisa smiled, and Marcus could see a hint of pride in her expression. That sounds like Bill. He always said the worst mistake in corrections was forgetting the humanity of those in custody. From the living room, Ethan called out a question about his homework. Lisa dried her hands on a dish towel. I should help him. Would you mind finishing up here? Just a few more dishes. Not at all, Marcus said, relieved for a moment alone to process this startling connection. As he mechanically washed and dried the remaining plates, his mind churned. Ethan was Warden Calloway's grandson. The watch, the phrase about knowledge and freedom, it all made sense now. The boy had been quoting his grandfather, the very man who had overseen Marcus's incarceration. What would the warden think if he knew an ex-con was walking his grandson home from school? Having dinner in his daughter-in-law's kitchen? By the time Marcus finished the dishes, he had decided it was time to end this unexpected detour in his carefully planned post-prison life. He would thank Lisa for dinner, say goodbye to Ethan, and find a different route home from work starting Monday. He joined them in the living room, where Lisa was helping Ethan with a math problem. The scene was so domestic, so normal, that it made something in Marcus's chest ache with a long-forgotten longing. I should get going, he said. Thank you for dinner. Lisa looked up. It's getting late. Do you need a ride somewhere? The offer was kind but would only complicate things further. No thanks. The bus stop isn't far. Then at least let me send you with some leftovers, she insisted, already heading to the kitchen. We'll never finish all that pasta ourselves. Before Marcus could protest, she was packaging spaghetti into a plastic container. He turned to Ethan, who was watching him with those thoughtful blue eyes. The warden's eyes. See you Monday? Ethan asked hopefully. Marcus hesitated. I might be changing my schedule at work, he said, the half-truth sitting uncomfortably on his tongue. Disappointment clouded Ethan's face. Oh, here you go, Lisa said, returning with a container of spaghetti. And I added some of that garlic bread you liked. Marcus accepted the container, feeling increasingly out of place in this home that represented everything he'd never had and never would. Thanks again. Lisa walked him to the door. On the porch, out of Ethan's earshot, she paused. Marcus, I want you to know that what you told me in the kitchen doesn't change my gratitude for what you've done for Ethan. He met her gaze, searching for any sign of the judgment or fear he was accustomed to seeing once people learned his history. He found none. You don't need to worry, he said. I won't be around Ethan anymore. Her brow furrowed. That's not what I was going to say. It's what you should say, Marcus replied. You don't know me. You don't know what I've done. I know you stood up for a child when others wouldn't, Lisa said firmly. And I know my father-in-law would be the first to tell you that your past doesn't have to dictate your future. The mention of the warden only strengthened Marcus's resolve. Thanks for dinner, Lisa. He turned and walked down the steps before she could say anything else. As he reached the sidewalk, her voice followed him. Same time on Monday, Marcus. Ethan will be waiting. He didn't look back, didn't acknowledge her words. The container of spaghetti was warm against his hands as he walked away from the blue house with its porch swing, determined not to return. Marcus spent the weekend in a state of restless agitation. He picked up extra dishwashing shifts at Mario's, scrubbing pots with a ferocity that earned him raised eyebrows from his co-workers. The physical labor helped quiet his mind, at least temporarily. On Sunday evening, he sat in his sparse room at the halfway house, staring at the bus schedule he'd spread on the small desk. There were other routes he could take, other stops where he could wait. All he had to do was add 20 minutes to his commute, and he could avoid the playground entirely. A knock at his door interrupted his planning. It was Tony, the halfway house supervisor. Got a visitor downstairs, Reed. Marcus frowned. He didn't have visitors. Ever. Who is it? Old guy. Says he knows you from Oak Hill. A cold weight settled in Marcus's stomach. There was only one old guy from Oak Hill who might have tracked him down, and the timing couldn't be coincidence. In the small visiting area downstairs, William Calloway sat in one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs. 7 years had added more silver to his hair and deeper lines around his eyes, but his posture remained straight, his gaze direct and unnervingly perceptive. "Mr. Reed," he said, standing as Marcus approached. "Thank you for seeing me." Marcus stood stiffly, feeling as though he'd been called to the warden's office. "Not like I had much choice, sir." A smile touched Calloway's lips. "Some habits die hard, I suppose. But I'm not sir anymore, or warden. Just Bill these days." He gestured to the chair opposite him, and Marcus sat down reluctantly. "I imagine you're wondering why I'm here," Calloway began. "Lisa told you," Marcus said. "It wasn't a question. She mentioned meeting you, yes. Said you'd been looking out for Ethan after school." Calloway's blue eyes, so like his grandson's, studied Marcus carefully. "She also mentioned you seemed intent on disappearing after learning who I was." Marcus said nothing. What was there to say? "I've known your whereabouts since your release, Marcus," Calloway continued, surprising him. "I make it a point to keep tabs on certain former inmates who showed promise." "Promise?" Marcus couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. "I'm an ex-con washing dishes and living in a halfway house. You're a man who made a mistake at 19 and paid his debt to society," Calloway corrected firmly. "A man who earned his GED behind bars, who never had a single disciplinary issue after that first year, who was a model inmate in every respect." The assessment, delivered in the warden's matter-of-fact tone, made Marcus uncomfortable. It painted a picture that glossed over too many harsh realities. "Why are you here?" he asked directly. Calloway leaned forward slightly. "To thank you for helping Ethan, first of all. Those boys have been making his life difficult since he started at that school. I just happened to be there," Marcus muttered. "Perhaps, but you chose to act when many would have walked away." Calloway paused. "And to ask why you feel the need to disappear from his life, now that you know he's my grandson?" Marcus met the older man's gaze. "You know why. He's a kid. I'm an ex-con with 7 years inside for armed robbery. His mother should be keeping him as far away from me as possible, not inviting me to dinner." "Lisa is an excellent judge of character," Calloway said. "As am I. We've both had plenty of practice." "It's not appropriate," Marcus insisted. "And you know it." "What I know," Calloway said with unexpected gentleness, "is that connections between people are rare and valuable things. Ethan has connected with you in a way he hasn't with many others. And unless I'm very much mistaken, that connection has meant something to you as well." Marcus looked away, unwilling to admit the truth in those words. The boys' chatter on their walks home had become a strange highlight of his days, a reminder that there were still people in the world who could look at him without seeing only his mistakes. "I've spent my career watching men leave prison and struggle to find their footing," Calloway continued. "The ones who succeed are almost always those who form positive connections on the outside, people who see them as more than their worst mistake." "I'm doing fine," Marcus said stiffly. "Are you?" Calloway's gaze was too perceptive, too knowing. "Working double shifts at a dishwashing job, living in a halfway house, avoiding human connection? That's surviving, Marcus, not living." The words hit too close to home, piercing the careful armor Marcus had constructed around himself since his release. "What do you want from me?" he asked, frustration edging his voice. "Nothing you don't freely choose to give," Calloway answered. "I just want you to know that if you were avoiding Ethan out of some misguided notion that I would disapprove, you were mistaken. On the contrary, I'm grateful to you." Marcus stared at the man who had once held complete authority over his daily existence. "You're telling me you're fine with an ex-con spending time with your grandson?" "I'm telling you, I believe in second chances, Marcus. I always have." Calloway stood, signaling the end of their conversation. "What you do with that information is entirely up to you." He extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Marcus stood and took it. "Time reveals truth," Calloway said, echoing the inscription on his watch. "Give yourself time, Marcus. The truth of who you are now may surprise you." With that, he left, leaving Marcus standing in the visiting area with more questions than answers. Monday arrived with a cold drizzle that matched Marcus's mood. He'd slept poorly, Calloway's words circling in his mind like restless birds. By the time his shift at Mario's ended, he had still made no firm decision about what to do. His feet made the choice for him, carrying him to the familiar bus stop across from the playground. He told himself he was just making sure Ethan made it home safely one more time. Just once more, then he'd find another route. 4 o'clock came and went. Marcus checked his watch repeatedly, scanning the street for any sign of the boy. By 4:15, an unfamiliar anxiety had taken root in his chest. Had something happened? Had the bullies caught Ethan somewhere else? Or had the boy simply given up on him after their conversation on Friday? The rain fell harder, soaking through his thin jacket. He should leave. The next bus would be coming soon. Then he saw him, running through the rain, backpack bouncing against his back, hood slipping off his head. Ethan spotted him and his pace quickened, a wide smile breaking across his face. "You came!" he gasped, out of breath from running. "I was worried you wouldn't be here." "Where were you?" Marcus asked more sharply than he intended. "You're usually here by 4. "Detention," Ethan admitted, looking sheepish. "I got in trouble." Marcus raised an eyebrow, finding it hard to imagine this rule-following boy doing anything detention-worthy. "What happened?" Ethan's gaze dropped to his sneakers, suddenly fascinated by their wet laces. "I punched Tyler Green in the nose." "You what?" He was saying stuff about Mom. Ethan mumbled. "Bad stuff. I told him to stop, but he wouldn't. So I hit him." Marcus stared at the boy, seeing him in a new light. Standing up for his mother, defending her honor. It revealed a thread of steel beneath the quiet exterior. "Did you hurt your hand?" Marcus asked finally. Ethan looked up, clearly surprised by the question. He held out his right hand, showing reddened knuckles. "A little. Mom's going to be so mad when she finds out." "Maybe," Marcus said, "but I think she'll understand why you did it." They began walking, huddled close together under the single small umbrella Ethan had brought. The boy's shoulder occasionally bumped against Marcus's side, a casual physical contact that would have made Marcus tense weeks ago, but now felt oddly normal. "Grandpa came to visit yesterday," Ethan said after they'd walked a block in comfortable silence. Marcus kept his expression neutral. "Did he?" "Uh-huh. He asked about you." "What did you tell him?" Ethan looked up, raindrops clinging to his eyelashes. "That you're my friend. That you're quiet, but you listen really well. That you make me feel safe." The simple declaration caught Marcus off guard. Safe. When had he ever made anyone feel safe? His entire adult life, he'd been someone others feared or avoided. "Your grandfather's a good man," Marcus said carefully. "He said the same about you," Ethan replied. They reached the blue house on Maple Street. The porch light was already on, glowing warmly against the gray afternoon. Lisa's car was in the driveway. "You coming in?" Ethan asked hopefully. "Mom's making chicken soup. It's really good when it's rainy like this." Marcus hesitated. He should say no, should stick to his plan to distance himself. And yet, just for a little while, he found himself saying. Ethan's face lit up and he bounded up the porch steps, Marcus following more slowly behind. Before Ethan could reach for his key, the door opened, revealing Lisa in a sweater and jeans, her expression a mixture of concern and relief. "There you are. I got a call from school about the detention. We need to talk about..." She stopped when she noticed Marcus. "Oh, hello again. I invited Marcus for chicken soup," Ethan announced, slipping past her into the house. "He walked me home in the rain." Lisa gave Marcus a small, knowing smile. "Did he now?" "Well, we certainly have plenty of soup. Come in out of the rain." The house felt warmer than Marcus remembered, or perhaps it was just the contrast with the cold rain outside. The smell of simmering chicken soup filled the air, homey and inviting. "You'll need to dry off," Lisa said, eyeing his soaked jacket. "Let me get you a towel." As she disappeared down the hallway, Ethan plopped his wet backpack by the door. "I'm going to change," he announced, heading for the stairs. "Don't let Mom start the lecture without me." Left alone in the entryway, Marcus had a sudden, overwhelming sense of being out of place, a jagged piece trying to fit into a smooth puzzle. What was he doing here, in this home with its family photos and comfortable furniture? Who was he trying to fool? He was reaching for the doorknob when Lisa returned, a large towel in her hands. "Here you go." She stopped, noticing his posture. "You're leaving?" "I shouldn't be here," Marcus said, his voice low. "This isn't... I'm not..." "Not what?" Lisa asked gently. He gestured vaguely at the house around them. "This... family dinners and chicken soup and..." He trailed off, unable to articulate the gulf between the life he'd lived and the one on display here. Lisa stepped closer, holding out the towel like an offering. "Everyone starts somewhere, Marcus." He didn't take the towel. "Your father-in-law came to see me yesterday." "I know," she said. "It was my idea." That surprised him. "Why?" Because Ethan hasn't stopped talking about you all weekend. Because you look like you were running away from something good based on assumptions about what Bill might think. She paused. And because I thought you deserved to hear from him directly that your past doesn't define you here. It defines me everywhere, Marcus said bitterly. Only if you let it. Lisa held his gaze unflinching. Take the towel, Marcus. Stay for soup. It's just dinner, not a lifetime commitment. From upstairs came the sound of Ethan changing. Drawers opening and closing. A brief clatter as something was dropped. Marcus looked at the towel, then at Lisa's outstretched hand. It would be so easy to turn and walk back into the rain, to return to the safety of his isolation where expectations were low and disappointments few. Instead, slowly, he reached out and took the towel. Just dinner, he said as much to himself as to her. Her smile was warm, genuine in a way that made something in his chest loosen slightly. Just dinner, she agreed. Over the weeks that followed, just dinner became a regular occurrence. Twice, sometimes 3 times a week, Marcus would walk Ethan home and stay for the evening meal. Gradually, stiffly at first, he began to participate in the Calloway household in small ways, helping Ethan with his math homework. Numbers had always come easily to him. Fixing the wobbly kitchen table, replacing the porch light that had been flickering for months. Each small act of usefulness was like laying a brick in the foundation of something he couldn't yet name, but which felt increasingly solid beneath his feet. December arrived with its shorter days and holiday decorations appearing in windows up and down Maple Street. Marcus had saved enough from his dishwashing job to put a deposit on a small studio apartment, a step up from the halfway house that represented real progress. His probation officer had commented on the positive changes in his demeanor, the way he was meeting his goals ahead of schedule. On a crisp Saturday morning, Marcus found himself helping Lisa and Ethan haul dusty Christmas decorations from their attic. He'd mentioned in passing that he had the day off, and somehow that had translated to an invitation to assist with the Calloway family's holiday preparations. This box goes in the living room, Lisa directed, handing him a cardboard container labeled "Tree Ornaments" in neat block letters. Ethan, careful with those lights. They tangle if you look at them wrong. Marcus carried the box downstairs, setting it beside the artificial tree they'd assembled earlier. The domesticity of the scene still felt surreal at times, like he was playing a part in someone else's life. Check if the star is in there, Ethan called, struggling with a knot of green wires. Dad always put it on last, but we need to make sure it works first. Marcus opened the box, carefully moving aside tissue-wrapped ornaments. At the bottom, he found a silver star with a cord trailing from its base. He lifted it out, turning it in his hands. Found it, he called back. Awesome! Ethan abandoned the lights to join him. That was Dad's favorite part. He'd lift me up to put it on top after everything else was done. There was no sadness in the boy's voice, just the matter-of-fact recounting of a memory. Marcus wondered at the resilience of children, how they could acknowledge loss without being consumed by it. Your dad sounds like he was a good father, Marcus said, handing him the star. He was okay, Ethan said with an 11-year-old's attempt at casual assessment. He didn't like staying in one place very long. Mom says he had a restless spirit. He turned the star over in his hands. Do you have a restless spirit, Marcus? The question, so unexpectedly philosophical, caught Marcus off guard. I don't know. Maybe once. These days I'm just trying to stay put. Ethan nodded sagely. Grandpa says roots are important. That's why we have the Christmas tree every year, even though Dad's gone. It's our tradition. From the hallway came the sound of the front door opening. Speaking of Grandpa, Lisa called from the kitchen where she was untangling more lights. That should be him now. He's joining us for lunch. Marcus tensed. Though Warden Calloway, Bill, as he now insisted on being called, had made his support clear, they hadn't been in the same room since their meeting at the halfway house. The prospect of seeing him in this domestic setting, as something other than an inmate or ex-con, made Marcus acutely aware of how far he'd stepped outside the carefully drawn lines of his post-prison plan. Ethan dashed to the door. Grandpa! Bill Calloway entered, a tall figure in a wool coat, his silver hair neatly combed, a shopping bag in one hand. He embraced his grandson with his free arm. There's my boy! Sounds like you've been busy up here. Nah, we're decorating. Marcus found the star. Come see the tree. Ethan pulled his grandfather into the living room, where Marcus stood awkwardly beside the half-decorated Christmas tree, still holding the silver star. Calloway's eyes crinkled with a genuine smile. Marcus, good to see you again. Sir, Marcus said, the old form of address slipping out despite himself. Bill, the older man corrected gently. I'm not your warden anymore. There was an awkward moment where neither seemed sure how to proceed. Handshake? Nod? Brief acknowledgement before retreating to separate corners? It was Ethan who broke the tension, oblivious to the complicated history between the two men. Grandpa, did you bring me a book? Calloway laughed, turning to the bag he'd set down. Don't I always? But first I have something for all of us. He pulled out a rectangular box. New lights for the tree. LED ones that don't tangle as badly. Oh, thank God, Lisa said, entering with a hopeless nest of old lights in her hands. These are possessed by demons, I swear. The simple domestic problem, recalcitrant Christmas lights, provided a buffer, something normal and manageable to focus on. Soon, all four of them were engaged in the task of decorating the tree. Lisa and Ethan hanging ornaments, Calloway directing the placement of lights, and Marcus, by virtue of his height, reaching the higher branches no one else could access easily. Hand me that red glass ball, Calloway said to Marcus, pointing to an ornament still nestled in tissue paper. Marcus carefully extracted it and passed it over. As their hands briefly met in the exchange, he was struck by the normalcy of the moment. The former warden and the former inmate, arranging Christmas decorations together as if their shared history had been something entirely different. You're doing well, Calloway said quietly, while Ethan and Lisa were distracted with another box of decorations. I've heard good things from your P.O. Marcus nodded, unsure how to respond to the personal assessment. Moving to my own place next week. Excellent. Calloway hung the red ornament, then turned to face Marcus more fully. You know, there's an opening for a maintenance assistant at the community center. Better pay than dishwashing. Regular hours. Marcus stared at him. Are you offering me a job? I'm on the board there, Calloway said with a slight shrug. They need someone reliable who can handle basic repairs, keep the place running smoothly. Your P.O. mentioned you've been helping out around here. He glanced meaningfully at the new porch light visible through the window. Thought you might be interested. The offer hung in the air between them. Not charity, not exactly, but certainly an opportunity that wouldn't have materialized without Calloway's influence. I don't need special treatment, Marcus said stiffly. It's not special treatment to recognize skills and connect them to needs, Calloway replied evenly. That's just good sense. Before Marcus could respond, Ethan called from across the room. Marcus, we need you to reach the top branches. The conversation suspended, Marcus moved to help, grateful for the interruption. Yet as he carefully placed ornaments were directed by an enthusiastic Ethan, the job offer lingered in his mind. Better pay, regular hours, work that required skills beyond washing dishes, work that might eventually lead to something like a career. After lunch, a casual affair of sandwiches and soup around the kitchen table, Calloway prepared to leave. He had another appointment, a meeting with former colleagues from the prison system. At the door, he turned to Marcus. Think about what I said. No pressure, but the position needs to be filled after the holidays. Marcus nodded. I'll think about it. Good. Yeah, good. Calloway patted his grandson's head. Ethan, walk an old man to his car, would you? I have that book for you in the trunk. As they disappeared down the porch steps, Lisa moved to stand beside Marcus in the doorway. He means well, she said quietly, even if his methods are sometimes a bit direct. I know, Marcus replied. It's a good offer. I just don't want to feel like you're getting special treatment because of your connection to us. Lisa finished for him. She smiled slightly. Bill doesn't do charity, Marcus. If he thinks you're right for the job, it's because you are. Marcus watched as Calloway opened his trunk, handing Ethan what appeared to be not one, but two books. The boy's excited reaction was visible even from a distance. He really believes in second chances, doesn't he? Marcus asked. Lisa's gaze followed his to her father-in-law and son. It's more than that. He believes people are fundamentally better than their worst mistakes. It's why he was so good at his job. She paused, and why he never gave up on his son, even when everyone else thought he should. Marcus glanced at her, curious about this oblique reference to Ethan's father. She'd rarely mentioned her ex-husband in their conversations. Michael, Ethan's dad, struggled with addiction for years, Lisa said, answering his unspoken question. He'd get clean, relapse, get clean again. Bill never stopped believing he could turn things around, even when I'd reached my breaking point. What happened to him? Marcus asked quietly. Overdose, Lisa said, her voice steady but sad. 2 years ago. He'd been clean for 8 months then. She shook her head. Bill was devastated. I think that's partly why he retired when he did. Marcus absorbed this new information, seeing Warden Calloway in a different light. The man who had run Oak Hill with such firm authority had been unable to save his own son from addiction. Yet he'd never stopped trying, never stopped believing in the possibility of change. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, inadequate words for such a loss. Lisa's smile was tinged with old sorrow. "Life goes on. We build new traditions, find new connections." Her gaze met his, warm and direct. Sometimes in unexpected places, something shifted in the air between them. A subtle change Marcus couldn't quite name but felt in the quickening of his pulse. Before he could respond, Ethan came bounding back up the steps, clutching 2 new books to his chest. "Grandpa got me the new Rick Riordan and a book about space," he announced triumphantly. "Can we finish the tree now? I want to put the star on top." The moment passed, but its echo remained as they returned to the half-decorated tree. As Marcus lifted Ethan to place the silver star on the highest branch, he felt the weight of the boy's trust in his hands. A trust extended not despite his past, but without regard for it. Perhaps that was what second chances really looked like. Not the absence of history, but the presence of possibility. Tyranny. The day of Marcus's move to his own apartment coincided with the first real snowfall of the season. Fat, wet flakes drifted from a pearl gray sky as he carried the last of his meager possessions. 2 garbage bags of clothes, a box of books collected during his time at Oak Hill, and a small television he'd purchased secondhand, up the narrow stairs to his 3rd-floor studio. The apartment was small but clean, with a kitchenette in one corner, a bathroom barely large enough to turn around in, and a main room that would serve as both bedroom and living area. The previous tenant had left behind a scarred coffee table and a floor lamp with a crooked shade, which, along with the mattress and folding chair Marcus had acquired, constituted the entirety of his furniture. It wasn't much, but it was his, the first space that belonged solely to him since before his incarceration. He set the box of books on the counter and stood in the center of the room, feeling a strange mixture of pride and trepidation. Freedom, real freedom, came with a responsibility he was still learning to navigate. A knock at the open door interrupted his thoughts. Lisa stood in the doorway, snow melting in her hair, a large shopping bag in her arms. "Housewarming," she announced, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Nothing fancy, just some essentials." Marcus watched, bemused, as she began unpacking the bag onto his counter. Dish towels, a set of plates and cups, cooking utensils, cleaning supplies. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I know," Lisa replied, continuing her unpacking. "But everyone needs basics. And I remember what it's like starting over with nothing." She moved around his small space with comfortable efficiency, putting things away in cabinets, lining up cleaning supplies under the sink. Marcus found himself standing awkwardly in his own apartment, unsure of his role in this unexpected domestic scene. "Where's Ethan?" he asked, noticing the boy's absence. "With his grandfather," Lisa said, breaking down the empty shopping bag. "They're having a boys' day out, lunch and a movie. Some superhero thing Ethan's been dying to see." She straightened, surveying the apartment with an appraising eye. "You need curtains, and maybe a small table for eating. But it's a good start." Marcus followed her gaze around the sparse room. "It's enough for now." Lisa turned to face him, her expression suddenly serious. "Have you thought about Bill's job offer?" The community center position had been on Marcus's mind for days. He'd gone so far as to visit the building, scoping it out from across the street like he might once have done, before a robbery, old habits that now served a different purpose. "I'm going to take it," he said. "Already talked to my PO about it. He thinks it's a good move." Lisa's face lit up with a smile. "That's wonderful. When do you start?" "After New Year's. Gives me time to give notice at Mario's." "We should celebrate," Lisa declared. "Dinner tonight? I'm making lasagna." The invitation hung in the air between them. In the weeks since the Christmas tree decorating, Marcus had been a frequent visitor at the Blue House on Maple Street, falling into a routine that felt increasingly comfortable. Yet there was something different about this invitation. Something in Lisa's voice, in the way she stood slightly closer than strictly necessary in the small apartment. "Lasagna sounds good," he said finally. Her smile widened. "Great. 6 o'clock? Ethan's movie should be done by then." After she left, Marcus stood in his new apartment, surrounded by the small touches she'd brought. Practical items that somehow made the space feel more like a home than just a room with his possessions in it. Outside, the snow continued to fall, coating the city in a clean white blanket that covered flaws and highlighted beauty. Marcus moved to the window, watching pedestrians hurry along the sidewalk below. heads bent against the weather. For the first time since his release, he allowed himself to think beyond the immediate future. Beyond probation meetings and minimum wage jobs in the halfway house. He thought about a man who might work at a community center, who might have friends and family dinners, who might be known for who he was becoming rather than who he had been. It was a fragile vision, too new and untested to bear much weight. But it existed now, a possibility that hadn't been there before. The community center job changed everything. Unlike the dishwashing position at Mario's, where Marcus had been largely isolated in the back of the kitchen, this work put him in contact with people, staff members, volunteers, and the public who used the center's facilities. Initially, this had been terrifying, each interaction fraught with the potential for exposure and rejection. But something unexpected happened. Most people didn't ask about his past. They simply judged him on his present actions, his reliability, his skill at fixing whatever needed repair, his quiet courtesy. By March, Marcus had settled into a routine that would have been unimaginable 6 months earlier. He worked regular hours at the community center, continued his mandated meetings with his probation officer, who had begun discussing the possibility of early release from supervision, and spent several evenings a week at the Calloway house, where his presence had become so normalized that he had his own key. His relationship with Lisa had evolved too, moving by careful degrees from friendship to something more. Their first kiss had happened on a January evening after Ethan had gone to bed. A tentative, questioning moment that had quickly deepened into something neither had expected, but both had been imagining for weeks. They had been cautious, mindful of Ethan and the complexities of their situation, but the connection between them had continued to grow, built on shared meals, quiet conversations after Ethan's bedtime, and the gradual intertwining of their separate lives. On a mild Saturday in early spring, Marcus found himself helping Bill Calloway repair the porch swing at the Blue House. The older man had become a regular presence in his life as well, a mentor of sorts who offered guidance without condescension, wisdom without judgment. "Hand me that wrench, would you?" Bill asked, pointing to the toolbox between them. Marcus passed it over, watching as the former warden tightened a bolt on the swing's chain with practiced movements. At 72, Bill Calloway remained remarkably spry, insisting on doing his own repairs despite Lisa's protests that he should leave such tasks to younger men. "You never think about going back?" Marcus asked suddenly. The question had been on his mind for weeks. "To corrections work, I mean." Bill paused, considering the question. "Sometimes I miss the purpose of it, the feeling that I was doing something that mattered." He resumed his tightening. "But I don't miss the system itself. Too many constraints, too much politics, not enough focus on actual rehabilitation." Marcus nodded, understanding more than most would. "You tantulini. You made a difference, though, at Oak Hill." Bill glanced at him, a question in his eyes. "Did I? You did for me." Marcus admitted, the words difficult but necessary. "That library program, the GED classes, they gave me something to work toward when all I had was time." A smile creased Bill's weathered face. "I always believed education was the key. Knowledge is freedom." Marcus finished with him, smiling at the familiar phrase. They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes, testing the swing's stability, making final adjustments to ensure it hung level. "She cares for you, you know," Bill said finally, his tone casual but his words deliberate. "Lisa, I haven't seen her this settled since before Michael's troubles began." Marcus focused intently on the chain in his hands, unprepared for this direct acknowledgement of his relationship with Lisa. "I care for her too," he said quietly. "And Ethan. I know you do. It's why I'm not concerned." Bill closed the toolbox with a decisive click. "Family comes in many forms, Marcus. Sometimes it's the one we're born into. Sometimes it's the one we create through choice and commitment." The implication was clear, and it sent a jolt of both terror and longing through Marcus. Family. The word conjured images he'd scarcely allowed himself to consider. Holiday gatherings, shared meals, the steady accumulation of days and years together. "I'm still on parole," Marcus said, the simple statement encompassing all his doubts and fears. "Still an ex-con. That doesn't just go away." "No, it doesn't," Bill agreed, his tone matter-of-fact. "It becomes part of your story, not the whole of it." He stood testing the swing with a gentle push. "Perfect. Ethan will be pleased." From inside the house came Lisa's voice, calling them in for lunch. Bill picked up the toolbox but paused before heading inside. "Time reveals truth, Marcus," he said, echoing the inscription on his watch. Give it time. Spring bloomed into summer, and with the warming days came a sense of possibility that Marcus hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. His probation officer had recommended early termination of his supervision based on his steady employment, stable housing, and positive community connections. The final decision would come in late August, potentially freeing him from the last formal constraints of his sentence nearly 2 years early. On a sweltering July evening, Marcus sat on the porch swing he and Bill had repaired, gently pushing it back and forth with one foot while nursing a cold lemonade. Inside, Lisa was helping Ethan pack for a 2-week summer camp. His first extended time away from home, a milestone he approached with equal parts excitement and trepidation. The screen door creaked open, and Lisa emerged, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. "If he packs one more book, that duffel bag is going to need its own zip code," she said, settling beside Marcus on the swing. He handed her his glass, and she took a grateful sip before returning it. "How's he doing?" Marcus asked, nervous but trying not to show it. Lisa leaned against his shoulder, a casual intimacy that still sometimes caught Marcus by surprise. "He asked if you'd drive up with us to drop him off tomorrow." "Of course," Marcus said without hesitation. "Whatever he needs." They swung in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching as fireflies began to appear in the deepening twilight, tiny lanterns hovering above Lisa's modest garden. 2 weeks is a long time, Lisa mused. The house will be so quiet. Marcus glanced at her profile, gilded by the porch light. "I could stay here," he offered. "Keep you company." She turned to meet his gaze, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I was hoping you would." The implication hung in the warm summer air between them. 2 weeks alone, without the need to be mindful of Ethan's presence, without the careful boundaries they'd maintained in his home. 2 weeks to explore what their relationship might become without constraints. "There's something I've been wanting to talk to you about," Marcus said, his voice low. "About the future." Lisa's expression grew serious, attentive. "I'm listening." Marcus took a deep breath. "When my parole ends, if it ends early like my PO thinks, I've been thinking about looking for a better place. Something bigger than the studio." He paused, gathering courage. "Maybe something big enough for more than just me." Lisa's eyes widened slightly, understanding the unspoken question. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" "Not yet," Marcus said carefully. "Not officially. But I wanted you to know I'm thinking about it. About us as a family." The word still felt foreign on his tongue, laden with hope and fear in equal measure. For so long, family had been a concept that belonged to other people. Normal people whose lives hadn't been interrupted by poor choices and prison sentences. Lisa reached for his hand, entwining her fingers with his. "I'm thinking about it too," she said softly. "Have been for a while now." The admission sent a surge of emotion through Marcus. Relief, joy, and a lingering disbelief that this could be his life, his future. "What about Ethan?" he asked. "He should have a say in this too." Lisa's laugh was soft, affectionate. "Marcus, that boy has been planning to have you as a permanent fixture in our lives since about week 3 of knowing you. He already considers you family." The screen door banged open, and Ethan bounded onto the porch, his energy undiminished by the late hour. "Mom, I need help deciding which books to take. I narrowed it down to 12, but I think that's still too many." 12? Lisa echoed, shooting Marcus an amused glance. "Honey, you're going to be swimming and hiking and making crafts. When do you think you'll have time to read 12 books? "At night," Ethan said, as if the answer were obvious. "And during rest hour. And maybe at lunch." Marcus smiled, recognizing in the boy's book obsession echoes of his own refuge in reading during his time at Oak Hill. "What if you take 4 books?" he suggested. "And I promise to send you 2 more halfway through. That way you'll have something new to look forward to." Ethan considered this proposal with the seriousness of a contract negotiation. 6 total seems like not enough," he countered. "What about 6 now and 2 more sent later?" 5 now, 2 later," Marcus returned, struggling to maintain a straight face. "Shh, final offer." Ethan extended his hand solemnly. "Done deal." As they shook on their agreement, Marcus caught Lisa watching them, her expression soft with an emotion he was still learning to recognize and accept. Love, uncomplicated by fear or doubt, simply present in the space between them. Later, after Ethan had finally settled on his 5 books and gone to bed, Marcus and Lisa returned to the porch swing. The night had deepened, stars visible through breaks in the tree canopy above, the air thick with summer heat and possibility. "I never thought I'd have this," Marcus admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. After Oak Hill, I thought the best I could hope for was to stay out of trouble, keep my head down, just exist without really living. Lisa rested her head against his shoulder. And now? Now I'm thinking about furniture for a bigger apartment, he said with a soft laugh. About helping Ethan with his homework next school year. About waking up next to you and not having to leave before morning. Good thoughts, Lisa murmured, reaching for his hand. I like this version of your future. Our future, Marcus corrected gently. The swing creaked softly as they rocked, the rhythm as steady and reassuring as a heartbeat. Around them, the summer night pulsed with life. Crickets chirping, the distant laughter of neighbors enjoying the cool evening, the occasional car passing on Maple Street. An ex-convict who stood up for a bullied kid had found not just redemption, but something far more precious. A family, a home, a sense of belonging that no prison walls could contain. Time had indeed revealed truth, just as the inscription on Bill Calloway's watch had promised. And the truth was both simpler and more profound than Marcus Reed had ever dared to hope. He was more than his worst mistake. He was worthy of love, and his second chance had become a new life entirely.